He looked me in the eyes and said I was too much woman for him. Years later, I watched him cry when I said, "This is my husband." Please, stick with me as I tell you my story. And before we start, share, subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let me take you back. My name is Tiniola Moore and I asked a man to marry me. It wasn't anything theatrical. No cameras, no big crowd. Just me inside the quiet Nigerian restaurant where I've worked for years. Where the smell of egusi and thyme seeps into your clothes and the ovens hum like old lullabies. I'd stayed after close, cleaned the place until it gleamed, and set one small table by the window with 2 white candles and a green cloth napkin folded into a lily. He always said green made me glow. James showed up 20 minutes late, said something casual about construction delays. He kissed my cheek and said, "Smells amazing." I told him to sit. The kitchen still smelled like garlic and fried plantain. High Life played low on the stereo, something vintage and slow. I brought out his favorite, Ifo Riro with semo, just enough spice to make his nose run, and a bottle of palm wine I'd driven across town to find. He laughed when he tasted it, said it reminded him of when we first met. For a moment it almost felt like love again. Then I handed him the gift, cookbook, I made. Months in the making. Each page a recipe tied to a memory. Our memories. Puff puff from the day we tried cooking drunk. Yam porridge from the night we had that blackout in winter. Okra soup from his birthday 2 years ago. I'd written everything in pen with little notes in the margins. Stories, laughter, grief. The last page held an envelope, soft and pale and tucked between a recipe for jollof rice and grilled tilapia. Inside was a ring. He turned the page, pulled the envelope out, didn't open it right away, just stared, then looked at me. And I'll never forget what he said. "Tenny, I can't marry you." I froze. Maybe he was joking. Maybe he hadn't understood. He went on. "You're too intense. You feel too much. It's like being with a storm. I need someone easier." The music kept playing, but in my head, everything stopped. I couldn't find words. I just watched him. His face was soft, almost apologetic, like he didn't want to hurt me, but didn't care enough not to. He stood up slowly, picked up his coat and hesitated by the door. "I'm sorry," he said. And then he was gone. The bell over the door jingled like it always did, and then silence poured in behind him. A kind of silence that hurt. I stood there, eyes on the empty chair, fingers still curled around the wine glass. In the kitchen I barely made it to the sink before I threw up. My stomach twisted like something had been ripped out of me. The ring was still there, wrapped in its envelope. I didn't want to look at it. I shoved it into a tin of flour on the bottom shelf, covered it with a scoop of white powder, and closed the lid like sealing a wound. Then I sat on the floor in the pantry, pulled my knees to my chest and just breathed. Each breath tighter than the last. Nobody prepares you for the kind of heartbreak that doesn't shout. The kind that slips its shoes off, walks out mid-sentence and leaves you holding the sentence alone. My mother tells me to stay strong. My best friend says, "You dodged a bullet." But I stopped cooking. Not on purpose. It's not like I make a decision to quit. It just leaves me. One day I'm slicing onions for pepper soup and the next, I'm staring at my hands like they've forgotten what to do. Nothing tastes right. The rice burns. The stew comes out flat no matter how much seasoning I add. The flavors that used to sing now just sit on the plate, tired and dull. I stopped dancing too. The speakers still hum in the mornings, those old High Life songs I used to sway to while stirring okra or flipping plantain. But my body doesn't respond. No rhythm. No urge. I move through the kitchen like a ghost. Customers start to thin out. The regulars don't come as often. The laughter in the dining room fades, like someone's turned down the volume on life. At work I smile when I have to. I say enjoy your meal, and have a nice night, but the words taste like chalk in my mouth. I go home and sleep in my clothes. I leave dishes in the sink. I stop answering texts that begin with, "You okay?" because I don't know how to say, "No, but please stop asking." The only place I let it break through is in the pantry. There's an old room in the back of the restaurant where we store bags of beans, jars of pepper, cartons of Maggi cubes. Smells like dry thyme and dust. I sit there on the floor, knees pulled up back against the wall, and I cry in the dark. Not always loudly. Sometimes it's just my face wet and hot and my chest too tight to speak. The ring is still in the flour tin. I haven't touched it. I haven't opened that lid since the night I buried it. Every time I pass by, I feel it calling to me like an old wound. But I keep walking. I'm not ready to bleed again. Then one evening the rain comes. Not a light drizzle. A full storm. the kind that makes the city hush. I'm wiping down tables ready to close, when the door opens and a man steps inside. He's soaked. No umbrella, no hood. Just water running down his face, his shirt clinging to him like skin. He doesn't say much. Just nods and sits at the far table. The one in the corner that stays empty most nights. I should have told him we were closed. Instead I ask what he wants. Jollof rice, he says. And ogbono soup. With fish please. His voice is quiet, steady. I nod and walk into the kitchen. My apron feels heavier than usual. But when I start cooking, something small flickers inside me. Something I thought was dead. I don't look for it. I don't name it. His cook. He kept coming back. The man from the rain. Always alone, always quiet. He didn't ask for menus or suggestions. Just jollof rice and ogbono soup with fish, no meat. Sometimes a side of dodo. Sometimes not. He sat at the same table every time. Back corner near the window with the cracked pane. Never looked at his phone. Never brought a book. Just sat, ate and left with a quiet nod. His name I learned from the receipt printer. Malik Okoye. It took me 4 days to start watching for him. I told myself it was curiosity. Or routine. But every time that bell over the door chimed and I saw him walk in, something in me straightened. Not joy, not excitement. Just awareness. Like remembering you still have a spine. He never said more than thank you. Never asked questions. Never stayed long. But he came every night like clockwork. And every night I cooked like someone was watching. Not judging, just seeing. It made a difference, so I didn't talk to him. Until the night he found me in the kitchen. It was a slow Thursday. Rain again. The few customers we had were already gone. I had turned off the stove, stacked the last of the dishes and slipped into the back to breathe. I didn't mean to cry, I never do. But the moment I sat down beside the walk-in fridge, it started. The kind of crying that sneaks up on you. No sobbing. Just water leaking from somewhere too deep to reach. I didn't hear the door open. Didn't hear him step in. But suddenly he was there standing by the prep table holding an empty plate. He didn't look startled or awkward. He just watched me for a moment then set the plate down gently. The food tastes sad today, he said. I wiped my face with the hem of my apron. Sorry, I mumbled, not looking at him. He tilted his head slightly. What happened to the woman who used to dance while serving me egusi? I laughed before I could stop it. It escaped from my chest like a cough. A small, sharp thing but real. The first sound of joy I'd made in 6 months. It surprised both of us. I looked at him then. Really looked. He had kind eyes. Tired eyes. Not the kind worn out by work, but the kind that had buried someone and never really came back from it. I didn't ask what broke him. He didn't ask what broke me. He just said, whatever it is, it doesn't have to finish you. Then he turned and walked out, leaving the empty plate behind. That was the first night I cleaned the kitchen while humming. Just a little. Not for him. Not for James. For me. He never asked to stay late, but Malik started helping anyway. At first it was small things. Carrying the mop bucket. Stacking chairs. Taking out the trash without being asked. I didn't stop him. Didn't thank him either. Just let it happen. Like rain slipping into the cracks of a dry place, quiet and necessary. We didn't talk about anything that mattered. He'd ask if we had more pepper. I'd ask if he liked the jollof spicy or not. He always said yes. Spicy was the only way it felt honest, he said once without smiling. The restaurant felt warmer with him around. Not loud or full, just lighter. Like the air didn't hang so heavy on my shoulders. I started cooking with rhythm again. Stirring in circles. Tasting as I went. I caught myself humming once. Stopped immediately. But he heard it, I know he did. Sometimes he'd lean against the doorframe, watching me fry plantains, eyes soft but never lingering too long. It didn't feel like a man waiting to be fed. It felt like someone waiting to be invited in. We didn't talk about James. Not once. Not even when he started showing up in my dreams again. That awful night at the restaurant looping like a film reel I couldn't stop. Malik never asked why I flinched when someone touched my wrist too suddenly. He never looked at the flour tin in the pantry, though I caught him glancing toward it once. He never pried. And somehow that made me want to tell him everything. One night, close to midnight, I was crouched near the back burner trying to relight it for the 100th time. The spark was stubborn, the flame flickering and dying like it knew I didn't have the energy. Let me, he said. His voice was low but steady. Not a suggestion. Not a demand. Just there. I shifted to the side and wiped my hands on a towel. He knelt down slowly, one knee to the tile and reached for the ignition knob with quiet care. I noticed how gentle his hands were, how deliberate his movements were. Like he'd done this before. Like he knew how to fix things. He got the flame to hold. A small blue curve danced under the pot. He didn't get up right away. I don't know what broke you, he said, eyes still on the burner. And I don't need to. But I can wait while you put the pieces back. I'm not in a rush. My breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat. For a second I forgot how to breathe. He looked at me then, not searching, just present. I didn't speak, just reached out slowly and let my fingers find his. His hand was warm and steady. That's all I let him have. But I didn't let go. It had been almost a year. The air smelled like fried garlic and smoked pepper. Lunch rush had just ended, and the kitchen buzzed with the quiet rhythm of cleanup, pans clinking, a radio playing low, Malik's voice humming along as he rinsed plates. I was behind the counter, wiping down the glass, half listening to the news when I heard the bell. I didn't look up right away. But something in the air shifted. Some cold shadow stepped through the door before he even said a word. "Tenny," came the voice. Familiar, soft, like a bad dream trying to sound harmless. I looked up. James. Hair shorter. Suit wrinkled. Smile too thin to be real. For a second I couldn't move. He looked almost the same. That was the worst part. As if none of it, none of what he did, what he left me with, had aged him at all. Meanwhile I'd lived 10 lifetimes in 1 year. He stepped in farther, glancing around the room like he expected it to feel different. "You kept it going without me?" he asked, laughing a little like it was a joke. "I heard you were doing well now." I didn't answer. I was still trying to figure out what part of him thought he had the right to stand there and say anything. He looked around the restaurant again, his eyes trailing over the photos on the walls, the chalkboard menu I started changing weekly, the corner table Malik had fixed after it wobbled one too many times. James blinked, taking it all in, and said, "You did all this by yourself?" Before I could answer, Malik walked out of the kitchen. He wore a plain black tee and an apron tied at the waist. His hands were still wet from the dishes. Without a pause he came straight to me, leaned down and kissed me on the forehead. A soft, unhurried kiss. Not for show. Not a claim. Just home. James froze. His eyes flicked to Malik, then back to me. "Who's that?" he asked, voice tight like he already knew but needed to hear it. I didn't hesitate. "My future," I said. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, thick with everything he didn't say that day he walked out on me. With everything I no longer needed to. James opened his mouth, then closed it again. For a second I thought he might ask something. But there was nothing left for him to ask. He looked at Malik one more time, then at me. And for the first time since I'd known him, James looked small. He left without another word. The door closed behind him. No chime. Just that hush again. Malik raised an eyebrow but didn't ask. I didn't explain. We went back to work like nothing had happened. But inside me something unlocked, quiet and certain. I'd finally chosen peace over the past. He started calling the next day. At first I didn't pick up. Just let it ring out. The voicemails were polite. Awkward. His voice stiff like he was reading from a script. Then he started waiting outside the restaurant. Never came in, just stood by the curb, hands in his pockets like some sad punctuation mark. One night I stepped out to take the trash and found him there, holding an envelope full of old photographs. "Do you remember this?" he asked, pulling one out. Me laughing at a street festival. Him behind me, out of focus. "You looked so happy." I said nothing. Took the bag to the bin. The next week he tried again. This time he brought that old sweatshirt I used to steal from him in winter. Folded it neatly, handed it over like it meant something. "I've changed," he said softly. "I'm not that man anymore." I looked him over. He seemed smaller. Not physically, just collapsed inside himself. "I was scared," he said. "You loved me more than I loved myself. Terrified me. But I see it now. I should have fought for you. I didn't know how." I didn't interrupt. He took my silence as an invitation. "Tenny, I don't expect you to forget everything. I want to fix it. We can start again." His words came slower then, more careful. "You were never too much. I was just too little. But I'm not anymore." He reached out like he meant to take my hand. I didn't move. Instead I pulled my hand back slowly and lifted it higher, just enough for him to see the ring on my finger. Simple. Gold. Worn without apology. He stared at it like it had slapped him. I let the silence settle before I said calmly, "It took me a long time to feel worthy of love again. Real love. Not crumbs. Not almosts." He opened his mouth, kept going. "And I found it. The kind that waits for you without trying to fix you. The kind that doesn't walk out when it gets inconvenient. His throat moved like he was swallowing something sharp. "And it wasn't you," I said. He blinked. His hands dropped to his sides. I don't know what he thought would happen. That I'd fall into his arms? That my heart had just been paused, waiting for him to come press play? Whatever he thought, this wasn't it. "I'm happy, James," I said gently. "Please don't come here again." He nodded slow, like the weight had finally landed. Then he turned and for the first time he didn't look back. I went inside. The door closed. The world kept moving. I stood by the sink for a moment, breathing in the smell of pepper stew and burnt plantain. Then Malik walked by, brushed my arm lightly and didn't ask anything. He didn't need to. Malik never got down on one knee. He never asked with a crowd watching or a ring held out in a velvet box. He didn't need to. By then I already knew. He'd shown me in every small thing. In the way he listened without trying to rescue me, in the steadiness of his presence. In how he never flinched when my silences stretched too long or my laughter came too loud. It was a Thursday evening, slow and quiet, the kind of night where the street outside seemed to hold its breath. We had just closed up. The lights were still low, music soft in the background, the air warm with the last of the fried plantain. Malik walked out of the back carrying a folded square of linen. No box, no ribbon. Just fabric. Simple. He handed it to me like it was nothing and everything all at once. I opened it slowly, not sure what I was expecting. Inside was a letter written in his careful, slanted script. "For every day he made you feel too much," it read. "I want to give you a lifetime of being just right." That was all. No speech. No promises carved in gold. Just that line, plain and certain, like the way he stood, steady, open, waiting. I didn't speak at first. My throat tightened. I held the letter to my chest and closed my eyes. There was no trembling. No fear. Just a stillness that felt like home. When I looked up, he was watching me, not for my answer but for my breath. I nodded. And that was enough. We closed the restaurant early that night, told the staff to go home, locked the doors before the last bus even passed. I didn't need to make an announcement. The joy on my face must have said it all. Later that week we packed what little we needed and flew to Lagos. Not for a big ceremony. Just to stand where my grandparents once married. In the small church near the lagoon where my grandmother used to sing in the choir. It wasn't about starting something new. It was about continuing something real. There, beneath old wooden rafters and fading stained glass, I said yes again. This time in front of salt air, warm light, and the memory of every woman in my family who once stood in that same spot and chose love that didn't ask them to shrink. Malik never needed to ask the question. He lived the answer every day. The church was full. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows, casting soft gold across the pews. A slow Yoruba hymn drifted through the air, thick with incense, old wood, and the warmth of gathered breath. Women wore head wraps like crowns. Aunties hummed into handkerchiefs. My mother sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes even before the ceremony began. I stood just outside the doors, my heart calm, not racing, not afraid. Malik waited at the altar, dressed in cream agbada, the same shade as the wildflowers wrapped around the columns. He looked like peace standing upright. My uncle offered me his arm. I took it. We began the walk down the aisle. My shoes made no sound against the tiled floor. Only the music carried us. As we passed row by row, familiar faces turned, smiled, some already in tears. I held my bouquet close, eyes on Malik, until they caught a shadow seated in the very back pew. James. He wasn't supposed to be there. No one had invited him. He sat stiffly, hands folded, head slightly bowed like he didn't know what to do with it. He looked thinner, tired. But not from grief, just from time passing him by. Our eyes met. I didn't flinch. Didn't stop walking. I only nodded. Once. Nothing more. That was all the past deserved. When I reached the altar, Malik took my hand. He didn't squeeze it. Just held it gently, the way he always did when words weren't enough. The music softened. The pastor stepped forward, his voice like velvet against the walls. "We are gathered here today." The ceremony flowed around me. Prayers, laughter, whispers from elders. My uncle passed my hand into Malik's with the quiet pride of a man handing over a legacy. I thought of my grandmother's wedding photo, tucked in my suitcase back at the guest house. I thought of the women who came before me who didn't always get to choose joy. Then the pastor asked the question. "Tiniola Moore, do you take Malik Okoye?" Before he could finish, I spoke. "I do," I said. Then I added, softly but without hesitation, 1,000 times. Malik's eyes didn't leave mine. They didn't need to. Behind us, the congregation exhaled. My mother pressed her lips to her fingers. Somewhere a child clapped too early and the whole room laughed through tears. But I didn't turn around. I didn't look at James again. The past had already walked out on me once. Now I was walking forward, with hands steady, with love that stayed, with a man who never asked me to be less. When the pastor said, "You may now kiss the bride," I leaned into the rest of my life without fear. And this time the silence in my chest was gone. The letters started coming 2 weeks after the wedding. James wrote them. Not with emails or texts, but actual letters. Folded sheets of lined paper, slid under the restaurant door before we opened. Some were long, others just a few words. All of them in his sharp, deliberate handwriting. "I miss you. I was wrong. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Please let me fix it." I didn't write back. I didn't read most of them past the first line. Just tucked them one by one into the drawer under the register until the stack grew thick and unimportant. Then came the voicemails. He called late, then early, then twice in 1 hour. His voice always sounded hoarse, like he'd been rehearsing. Always the same refrain. "Tenny, please. Just hear me out. I didn't know how to love you then. I do now. I'm not asking for everything, just a chance. Please. I miss you." I stopped answering unknown numbers. Blocked what I could. When I didn't respond, he reached out to my family. My aunt in Baltimore called me confused. Said James had emailed her some long message about regret. Then my cousin in Abuja sent a screenshot. James begging for help to get a word to Tenny. And then finally he reached my mother. She didn't tell me right away. She waited until we were shelling egusi seeds together at her kitchen table. Her hands slowed, then stopped. "He called me," she said quietly. I didn't lift my eyes. "I figured." She hesitated, then continued. "He said he's different now. That he made a mistake. That he didn't know what he was losing." I looked up then. Her face was calm, steady. She met my gaze with the weight of someone who had raised a daughter through fire. "I told him," she said, "you didn't get lost. He threw you away." The words settled into the air like truth you don't need to explain. That night the rain came down in sheets. Heavy, steady, loud against the roof of the restaurant. I stayed late to finish the week's accounts. Malik had gone home early to put our bags away. We were leaving for Lagos in the morning. I stood by the window sipping lukewarm tea when I saw the car, parked across the street. Headlights off, engine running low. James. He sat behind the wheel, unmoving, face dim behind a fogged windshield. His hands gripped the steering wheel. Rain poured down around him, streaking the glass, pooling beneath his tires. He didn't get out, didn't call. Just sat there alone in the storm, watching the restaurant. Watching the place he used to walk through like it was his. He stayed for almost an hour. Then the car pulled away. No message. No more letters. I watched until the tail lights disappeared. Then I turned off the lights, locked the door and went home, where love had waited patiently without conditions, and never once asked me to be anything less than everything. When we returned from Lagos, the restaurant felt different, warmer, fuller, alive. Not just from the new customers or the brighter paint, but from the quiet kind of peace that settles when you stop waiting to be hurt. I hung the old cookbook on the kitchen wall, just above the prep counter. The page where I once hid the ring now held a new recipe in Malik's handwriting. Healing soup. Spiced with ginger, laced with honey, finished with crayfish and a squeeze of lime. Nothing fancy, just comfort. The nights were slower now. Softer. Laughter floated from the kitchen more often. Staff stayed late. Was I right to close that chapter for good? Or do you think some people truly deserve a second chance? I'd love to hear your take. Drop your thoughts below. And if heartfelt stories like this resonate with you, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you're here for the next one.